much better option to sit at home in front of the telly and chill out. But the reason why you are here tonight is because we have a person who can talk to you about the issues surrounding this task that you are dealing with, who works in the industry, who works with the issues and the people involved in the area of domestic violence as part of her everyday job. So rather than us read it out of a textbook or listen to people who are guessing at things, we're going to hear from the expert. So I'd like to introduce you tonight to Karen Marsh, who's the team leader of an organisation called SCOPE, which is a domestic violence support agency. She is going to talk to you about domestic violence and her role and what SCOPE does in relation to that, and that will kind of take up half of our evening. At that point, our Caloundra High School students will leave. Your task will come later because you're not quite up to this one yet. And the rest of us will stay and get ready for our role play scenarios. So if you're sitting there wondering if you're ready or not for that role play scenario, we will talk you through it. We will make sure that you're ready to go, so don't be worried about that. We'll have plenty of time to get ready for that later on. I probably should introduce myself because I know the Caloundra High School people haven't met me yet, and I do have a few new people in the room that have just enrolled and have had to come this week on short notice. So my name's Amanda Payton and I'm the trainer and assessor of the Cert for and Justice Studies. So Caloundra High people, of course you've got the wonderful Mrs. Tui to take you through your course, but I'm marking all of your assessments. So in a few weeks' time I'll come to Caloundra and I'll mark you on your role plays, so we'll get to meet then. And if you haven't met me yet, I see some familiar names on my sign-in sheet of people that I've been talking to over email especially, but I haven't yet met you face to face. Just make yourself known to me tonight so I can see who you are and make sure you're all on track. So I hand over to Karen now and she will get into all the information.
Great. Thank you very much for having me tonight, and it's great to see students. Are you year 11 as well? Year 11? Yeah? Actually engaging in a subject like domestic violence. I'm very passionate about it. I've been working for, Centacare, which is the actual organisation, and the program is called SCOPE. So SCOPE stands for Sunshine Coast Cooloola Outreach, Prevention and Education. So basically, under our funding and under that program, we are funded to deliver all of those things. So I've been working there for probably about 11 years, which has gone really fast. And I started out as a court support worker and was on my placement for my degree and started going into the court supporting people to go through to get domestic violence orders. And I progressed then to go into counselling, working with people who've been impacted by domestic violence. And I suppose for me, there was a bit of a frustration because a lot of the funding is going towards assisting people, and it's kind of that band-aid end. So I was really wanting to see a change in domestic violence and in that area. So I thought perhaps I might move then from counselling women who've been impacted by domestic violence to working with children. So I then underwent studies to work with young people and adolescents. And again, I soon realised that domestic violence pattern was already in by the age of 3, that young people observe domestic violence in the home and that the pattern is already there. So I thought, okay, I will move to a new area, and I started working with women in groups and helping to move them on forward through domestic violence, hoping to see that change. I then moved on to work with the men, so I'm now working in the Men's Change Behaviour Program, where we assist men to look at changing behaviour and looking at those underlying issues of why this is happening. I've also moved into this area of education because I see the importance of working with young people across Queensland, across the Sunshine Coast, because I think it's an early intervention that people understand at this stage you've got that ability to think things through, to see two sides of the problem and make decisions yourself. So hence I think education is really important. So I've had that opportunity to work with most programs and now a little bit of management, which I don't really like. So I'd encourage you to ask questions and help me out in talking to you, because obviously in your assignment there's going to be a lot of things that you're needing to cover. And I know my son actually did this unit at Maroochydore and he learned a lot from it. So please ask questions. So, where are we at? Okay, so as I said, we cover all the way from Caloundra, so we have somebody in the outreach position at Caloundra, right the way through to Gympie. Probably our staff are all of 12, and we have outreach workers sitting at the Caloundra Community Centre, Gympie Women's Health, Noosa Court. Our main office is Maroochydore, which is next to the police station. We have an outreach worker that goes to Nambour, to the community centre. And we have the 5 courts across the Sunshine Coast. So our aim is actually to reduce domestic violence. I know on the Gold Coast their aim is to actually eliminate it, but that would be in an ideal world. So our aim is to see a reduction, and unfortunately, as I looked at research, latest research, we're not seeing that. I'm often asked by the media, is domestic violence increasing? It's not something that you can just answer, because is it based on more awareness in the community that people know more about domestic violence, or they're coming forward, there's more public awareness, or is it that it's increasing? So have a think about that as we go forward, but I was disturbed about what I read. Just a visual picture so that you can see how far we're covering. Just in that, think about terms of complexity. It's not just the people that we're dealing with, it's also the political environment that we're in. At the moment, we have to apply for funding every 3 years, and our funding expires in June. So with changes in the government and for them putting out tenders across, and that can go, to other states, to other countries, I think there was 5,500 applicants for the next round of funding. So at the moment, with the changes in government, with Labor coming in, we're still waiting to find out whether we get that funding. So when you're thinking of those complexities, our men's group is having to go until June, and then and only then will we know whether we've had that extended or not. So just thinking about the context of domestic violence, so it is a huge issue of public concern. And if you just look at some of those stats, just the homicides, 122 were intimate partner homicides. So women make up the majority of domestic violence applications. Assaults are huge. Stalking is a huge issue. And, domestic violence, when you think about domestic violence, it's a huge component to homelessness. So a lot of women who are fleeing a domestic violence situation, taking their children, moving out of the home, there is a huge amount that become homeless, and it's a massive issue on the Sunshine Coast because obviously we don't have a lot of accommodation, we don't have places for women to flee to. It's hard to get private accommodation as it is on the Sunshine Coast. This is what I was looking at last night, and I was horrified to see that we were saying last year that 1 woman is killed a year through domestic violence. It's doubled. So just in this year, we've had 13 deaths related to domestic violence. Now, they're obviously alleged at the moment. You might have heard some of this in the media. And if you look at it, these are people from all different walks of life. So when I'm in the court and people are coming through, they can range from all different walks of life's professions. I'll just take you through a few more of those. So, I mean, if you think about it, that's 13, and I think the last one was Monday of this week. So it is a huge, huge issue, and what they're talking about, if you want to have a look at it, was the Herald in Victoria, who put the article, it's up on the internet, and they're saying that, you know, where homicides are going down, homicides for domestic violence is going up. So it's something that we really need to address. One of the arguments, or one of the discussions that's happening at the moment, is should we take the word domestic out of violence? Should it just become a criminal offence? You know, when we say domestic violence, does that water down that it is abuse? Or should we leave it in there and really aim high and say this is a criminal offence? Because at the moment it's civil, but there are elements of it which are actually criminal. So just something to think about, because we're really talking about how that needs to be taken more seriously. So if I asked you, what is domestic violence? So rather than the types of domestic violence or abuse, who would be game to have a go? If you were thinking about a relationship, how would you define domestic violence? Someone give it a go. Yeah?
Whether it be financial, emotional, or physical abuse, it threatens the victim.
Yeah, so there's a fear element in there, and you've just named some of the types of abuse. When I'm thinking about a domestic violence relationship, and you're right in saying fear, is that I'm thinking of power and control, an unequal relationship. So when I'm defining that, and there's many different ways of defining it, it's behaviour that controls and dominates another person through fear and intimidation. So it's that element of fear about that person's safety, and they can't have their own opinion, they can't own their own feelings. And when I'm talking, we have a lot of people walking into the office, so police will often say, I'll just go down to Scope, because we're sitting right next to the police station and the court. So police, usually they need to witness abuse. If they've got someone coming in, they will send them down to us to help them out with an application. So I'm having to, if I'm the person addressing that walk-in, I'm thinking all the time, risk assessment. I'm thinking about what they're telling me. I'm listening for the types of abuse. I'm listening for the level of fear, and I'm trying to make some kind of assessment. Is this abuse escalating? Because the fact is domestic violence does escalate. So I'm going to ask you a question, maybe you can do a show of hands. Who thinks women are just as abusive as men? Yeah, we got it. And who thinks that men are more abusive than women? We have a few. So we've actually got more people saying that women are just as abusive as men. So if you look at your legislation, and they did change the language to be non-gendered, but if you look in the preamble, which is the part that comes in first, it does recognise those stats that we were talking about. So we do, I mean, women can be abusive, but in the majority of cases, it's usually that the male person is more predominantly the predominant aggressor, and that women are more, and children more, on the receiving end of abuse. But we do have women who are abusive. And I was just talking to Scott Woodward, the sergeant who's over domestic violence and mental health, and he was saying that he has seen a few coming through. We do see police taking out orders against women, but sometimes when we actually get them into the office to provide counselling or provide some kind of intervention, we quite often find that maybe they were on the receiving end of abuse before, but it was a different kind of abuse, and that they haven't reported that, or they may have acted to protect themselves. So really important to assess it so that we know what's happening. Sometimes we have cross orders, although under the legislation change, they don't actually support cross orders, but at times police will take it out. And sometimes a person may take out their own order. So it can be a police order or their own order. So talking about the types, and I know you said some up the back. So you said emotional, yeah? Can you what would you, like if you were thinking about emotional abuse, can you describe maybe what one of those behaviours might look like? Anybody? No? Yeah?
Insulting.
Insulting, yeah? Okay, yeah, the back? Did you have one? No? So insulting, how would I insult somebody? What might I do or say? Yeah?
Talking something about his physical appearance.
Yeah, so quite often emotional and that verbal kind of abuse, so putting somebody down, telling them that they're fat, they're ugly, you're no good, you're a lousy mother. There's a lot of other words that I could use in there, but basically totally putting them down. Why do you think someone would want to do that? Yeah?
So that I have a low self-esteem and don't try to resist or anything?
Yeah, so they'll have a low self-esteem, yeah.
Maintain control of the relationship.
Yeah, maintain control of the relationship. Any other thoughts? If I was the yeah?
People demoralised are less likely to act out.
Yeah, okay, so they're going to be more submissive. Yeah. Anything else, like why, if I was the perpetrator, why would I want to do that? What am I trying to achieve? You said have power and control. What am I afraid of? Have a think about it. What would I be afraid of? Why do I need to make you small? Yeah?
Loss.
Loss. What am I afraid I'm going to lose?
Partner.
A partner. So basically one of the theories, and I think there's about 33 theories on domestic violence, but one of those is called attachment theory, and it's that fear of abandonment. I'm afraid that my partner's going to leave me, so I'm going to, and I'll just generalise when I say her, I'm going to put her down, make her feel really bad, and then she won't leave me. Do you understand? So it's about keeping that person under my control because of my own fears. And I hear that a lot when I'm talking to the men in the men's group. So let's run through some of those. Anyone else can think any more of what other types of abuse there might be before I run through them? Yeah? Sorry?
Verbal.
Yep, so the verbal abuse, so the swearing. Quite often when we're assisting people with DVOs or domestic violence orders, they don't want to put down all the words. And we really need exactly what's been said. So obviously we're encouraging them to give all the swear words, give the whole thing, because we're just putting down exactly what's been said or what's in the text message. Yeah.
Physical violence.
Physical violence. And a lot of people think it's just physical. And obviously it's not. And sometimes when someone comes in and talks about the abuse, they have not recognised it as being domestic violence because they think it is only physical. He didn't hit me or she didn't hit me, so therefore it's not domestic violence. Any other thoughts about what other forms of abuse there might be? Okay, well let's run through them because when the legislation changed in 2012, it finally recognised the types of abuse. When I first started out working, it was a different kind of legislation that talked about harassment and intimidation. And we had to kind of fit all these other types of abuse under that when we were assisting. So, physical abuse, and that's behaviour that's pushing, shoving, hitting, slapping, any of those types of abuse, threatening with a weapon, restraining somebody, or even damaging their personal property. So I quite often have someone say, you know, he broke something that's really important to me or threatened to break it because he knew what that would mean to me. So it covers that area. Then you've got sexual abuse. Do you think people would come forward readily to talk about sexual abuse? And of course they don't. And I've unfortunately, we do have good magistrates, but I have sat in court over a number of years and I've heard magistrates start reading out the contents of someone's order, and I've been horrified because, you know, people are putting, I mean, obviously when whatever you're putting in that application is going to go to the other party, and it is before a magistrate. A lot of people won't put forward the sexual abuse. And obviously, under criminal, that would be section